In a world drowning in violence, corruption, and silence, something was about to happen that humanity could never reverse. Asterisk, not a small event, not a symbolic lesson, a complete reset of everything they knew. But here is the paradox that shakes the entire story. Asterisk, while the whole world was falling apart, one man was quietly saving it. His name was Noah. And the most disturbing part is this: people were not destroyed because they were unaware of God, but because they ignored what they could clearly see. Asterisk, the rain hadn't started yet. The sky still looked normal. Life still felt predictable. Asterisk, but in heaven, the decision had already been made. Asterisk, inside a world full of noise, one voice still mattered. One obedience still counted. One life still carried the future of humanity. Asterisk, and what God was about to do would not just judge a generation. Asterisk, it would reveal what happens when mercy waits and humanity refuses to listen. Asterisk, because when the door finally closes, it is never just about water outside. Asterisk, it is about everything inside the heart that was never changed. Asterisk, and what happened next would become one of the most shocking moments ever recorded in the book of Genesis. Asterisk, but to understand it, you have to go back to the beginning of a world that forgot how to listen. Asterisk. There was a time when the earth was full, not of life, but of noise, voices, desires, violence. From a distance, it might have looked like progress. Cities forming, people multiplying, humanity expanding across the land. But beneath that surface, something had gone deeply, irreversibly wrong. The world had drifted, not suddenly, not in one catastrophic moment, but slowly, quietly, choice after choice. Asterisk, people no longer lived with any awareness of God. His presence was no longer feared, no longer honored, no longer even considered. What once may have been sacred had become distant, almost forgotten. Asterisk. And then comes one of the most unsettling descriptions ever recorded in Scripture. In the book of Genesis, Asterisk, God saw that the wickedness of man was great on the earth, and that every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil. Continually, not sometimes, not occasionally, continually. Think about that for a moment. Asterisk A. World where corruption wasn't the exception, it was the norm. Where violence wasn't shocking, it was expected. Where conscience had grown silent. Asterisk, humanity had reached a point where evil was no longer resisted. It was embraced. Asterisk, and in that environment, relationships were no longer built on trust, but on power. Strength dictated reality. The strong took what they wanted. The weak had no voice. The earth itself, according to the text, was filled with violence. Not just scattered acts, but a culture of violence. Asterisk, this wasn't just moral failure. It was systemic decay. And here is where the narrative takes a turn that many overlook. Not just what humanity became, but how God responded. The text says that God saw. He wasn't distant. He wasn't unaware. He saw everything, every hidden act, every silent intention. Every corruption that no one else noticed. Asterisk, and then something deeply profound is revealed. Asterisk, it says that God was grieved in his heart. Asterisk, this is not the language of an indifferent creator. This is the language of sorrow. The creator looking at his creation and feeling pain. Asterisk, why? Because what was made for good had chosen destruction. What was designed for relationship had chosen separation. Asterisk, and then comes a decision that echoes through all of history. God declares that he will wipe mankind from the face of the earth, not out of impulse, not out of uncontrolled anger, but as a response to a world that had completely rejected its purpose. A reset, a judgment. Asterisk, a moment where justice would confront corruption. Asterisk, but in the middle of this collapsing world, where darkness seemed absolute, there was one name that stood apart. One man, one life. Asterisk, one exception in a sea of corruption. His name was Noah, and everything was about to change because of him. Asterisk, but who was this man? And what made him different in a world where no one else seemed to care? That is where the story truly begins. In a world where no one was listening, there was still one man who did. Asterisk, his name was Noah. Asterisk, the scriptures describe him in a way that immediately separates him from everyone else alive at that time. In the book of Genesis, it says that Noah was a righteous man, blameless among the people of his generation, and that he walked with God. That last phrase changes everything. He walked with God. Asterisk, not visited, not remembered occasionally. Walked. Asterisk, it suggests consistency, intimacy, direction. Asterisk, while the world was moving further into corruption, Noah was moving in the opposite direction. While others followed their impulses, he followed something higher, something unseen, yet deeply real. But this raises an uncomfortable question. What does it mean to live right when everyone else is living wrong? Asterisk, Noah wasn't isolated in a cave. He had a family. He lived among people. He saw the same violence, heard the same noise, faced the same pressures. Yet somehow he refused to become like them. That kind of life comes with a cost. Imagine the looks, the rejection, the misunderstanding. Asterisk, in a culture where corruption is normal, righteousness looks strange, even threatening. Asterisk, Noah likely didn't blend in. He stood out, and standing out in a broken world is never easy. But his life wasn't defined by the opinion of people. It was defined by his relationship with God. Asterisk, he had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. A family that would soon carry more significance than they could possibly understand. Asterisk, because what God was about to reveal to Noah would not just affect him. It would affect every living thing on earth. Asterisk, the same God who saw the corruption of the world now speaks directly to the one man who still listened. Asterisk, and when God speaks, it's never without purpose. He tells Noah something no one had ever heard before. A flood is coming. Asterisk, not a storm, not a season of rain. A complete, overwhelming, unstoppable judgment. Waters would rise. The earth would be covered. Life as they knew it would end. Asterisk. Try to imagine hearing that. In a time when rain itself was not even part of human experience as we know it today. Asterisk. No precedent. No example. No explanation that would make it easier to believe. Just a word from God. And then, something even more unexpected. Asterisk. God doesn't just warn Noah. He gives him an assignment. A mission that would require faith beyond logic, obedience beyond comfort, and endurance beyond imagination. Build an ark, a structure massive in scale, precise in design, and completely out of place in that world. This wasn't just about survival. This was about trust. Asterisk. Because everything that would happen next depended on whether Noah would believe what he could not yet see. Asterisk. And the question now becomes unavoidable. Asterisk. Would he obey, even when nothing around him made sense? The instruction was clear, but nothing about it was easy. Asterisk. God did not give Noah a vague warning. He gave him precise, detailed direction, dimensions, materials, structure, everything carefully described in the book of Genesis. An ark, not a small shelter, not something symbolic, a massive vessel built on dry ground. Length, width, height, all defined. Rooms inside, covered inside and out with pitch. A single door, a window above. Every detail mattered. But here's the tension. There was no visible reason for it. Asterisk. No rising water. No changing skies. No sign that anything unusual was about to happen. Asterisk. Just a command. Asterisk. And this is where the weight of obedience truly begins. Asterisk. Because obeying when you understand is one thing. But obeying when nothing makes sense? That reveals something deeper. Faith. Asterisk. Noah didn't negotiate. He didn't delay. The text is simple, almost quiet in its power. He did everything God commanded him. Think about that. Asterisk. Day after day. Building something that no one else understood. Asterisk. The sound of wood being cut. The structure slowly rising. The outline of something completely unfamiliar taking shape. People would have seen it. They would have asked questions. Or maybe they didn't ask. Maybe they mocked. Asterisk. What are you building? Asterisk. Why are you building it here? Asterisk. What is this even for? Asterisk. And what answer could Noah give that would sound reasonable? A flood is coming. Water will cover the earth. God said so. In a world already corrupted, that kind of message wouldn't be received with humility. It would sound absurd. And yet, the ark kept growing. Asterisk. Board by board, beam by beam. Asterisk. This wasn't a quick task. It likely took years, maybe decades. Asterisk. Which means Noah's obedience wasn't momentary. It was sustained. He woke up every day and chose to continue. Asterisk. No applause. No validation. No external confirmation. Just trust. And slowly, something began to happen. Asterisk. The ark became more than a structure. It became a testimony. A silent declaration that something was coming, whether people believed it or not. Asterisk. And then, as the work neared completion, God speaks again. Asterisk. This time, the instruction becomes even more specific. The ark would not be empty. Animals were to come. Asterisk. Pairs of every kind, male and female. creatures of the land, the sky, everything that had breath, not by Noah's effort alone. They would come, and along with them, provisions, food, preparation for a time no one had ever experienced before. The moment was approaching. The line between warning and fulfillment was about to disappear. And once it began, there would be no turning back. But one question still lingers in the air. When the time finally came, who would enter? And more importantly, who would be left outside? There comes a moment in every story when preparation ends and reality begins. For Noah, that moment had finally arrived. The ark stood ready, silent, massive, waiting. Everything God had instructed was complete. Every detail followed. Every step obeyed. Now there was nothing left to build, only to enter. And then something extraordinary began to happen. The animals came, not driven by fear, not chased, not gathered by human force. They came from every direction. Creatures of the land, of the sky, moving with a strange, quiet purpose. Pairs of every kind, just as God had said. The chaos of the natural world suddenly aligned with a higher order. It must have been a sight no one could ignore. And yet, the world still did not respond. No mass repentance. No turning back. No urgency. Life outside the ark continued as if nothing was about to change. And that is one of the most sobering realities in this account. Judgment was approaching, and people carried on normally. Then God speaks again to Noah. Enter the ark. Noah, his wife, his sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and their wives. Along with them, every living creature appointed for preservation. One by one, they entered. Inside that ark was something more than survival. It was separation. Inside, life. Protected by obedience. Outside, a world about to face the consequences of its choices. And then comes a detail that is easy to miss, but impossible to ignore. The text says that God himself shut the door. Not Noah. God. That door was not closed by human hands. It was sealed by divine authority, which means something very important. Once it was closed, it would not open again. No last-minute entries. No second chances in that moment. The time for decision had already passed. And still, nothing had happened yet. No rain, no flood. Just a closed ark, sitting in stillness. Can you imagine what that silence felt like? Inside, a family waiting. Outside, a world unaware. And then, it began. A sound that had never been heard before. Rain, at first, perhaps just drops, then more, then relentless. The sky opened, and at the same time, the depths of the earth broke apart. Waters rising from below, pouring from above. The boundaries of creation itself seemed to collapse. This was not a natural storm. This was the unraveling of the world as they knew it. And suddenly, everything Noah had built, everything he had believed, everything he had endured, it all made sense. But for those outside, understanding came too late. What began as rain became something far beyond it. The sky did not close again. Day after day, the rain continued, relentless, uninterrupted, not a passing storm, but a sustained outpouring unlike anything the earth had ever seen. Asterisk. And it wasn't just the sky. The fountains of the deep burst open. Waters surged upward from beneath the earth, meeting the torrents descending from above. Creation itself seemed to be coming undone, as if the boundaries that once held order were now released. Asterisk. Inside the ark, there was movement, sound, the presence of life contained within wood and pitch. Asterisk. Outside, there was none. The waters rose, slowly at first, then rapidly. Asterisk. Ground disappeared. Paths vanished. Land that had once been stable began to sink beneath an unstoppable force. Asterisk. Homes, fields, structures built by human hands, all swallowed. And then something even more sobering. The highest places were no longer safe. Asterisk. The waters continued to rise until even the mountains were covered. Asterisk. There was nowhere left to run. Asterisk. Nowhere left to stand. Asterisk. Every living thing that breathed outside the ark perished. Asterisk. Not selectively, not partially, completely. It's a difficult truth to face, but the book of Genesis does not soften it. This was total judgment, and yet, at the same time, total preservation. Asterisk. Because above the waters, something remained. The ark, lifted, carried, not by Noah's strength, not by human control, but by the very waters that brought destruction. Asterisk. The same force that ended the world below was sustaining the life above. There is something deeply paradoxical here. What was judgment for some became salvation for others. Asterisk. And inside that ark, time began to feel different. Days passed, then weeks, then months. No horizon, no land, just water in every direction. Asterisk. The rhythm of life reduced to waiting, trusting, enduring. Asterisk. The outside world had been silenced. No more noise, no more violence, no more corruption. Asterisk. Only water, and the quiet reality that everything had changed. Asterisk. And in the middle of that silence, one question would inevitably rise. Asterisk. Had God remembered them? Asterisk. Because when you are surrounded by uncertainty, when the past is gone and the future is unclear, faith is no longer theoretical. It becomes everything. Asterisk. And that is exactly where Noah and his family now found themselves. Asterisk. Carried across an endless sea, with nothing to hold on to except the word that had brought them there. Asterisk. But then, something shifts, not in the waters first, but in the intention of God. And then, the silence of the waters began to change. Asterisk. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but in a way only heaven could measure. Asterisk. The book of Genesis describes it with simplicity, but behind those words lies a long and painful waiting. God remembered Noah. Asterisk. Not as if he had forgotten, but in the language of Scripture, this remembering signals divine intervention, a turning point, a shift in direction. The waters began to recede, slowly at first, imperceptibly, then gradually. The endless surface that once covered everything started to lower. Asterisk. The ark, which had been carried for so long by the floodwaters, eventually came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. Asterisk. Still no land fully visible, still no return to normal life. But something had changed. The movement had begun. Asterisk. Inside the ark, time continued its quiet rhythm, waiting, listening, observing. No one could step outside yet. There were no signals of safety, Only signs of transition. Then Noah takes a step that reveals both wisdom and patience. He sends out a raven. It flies back and forth, restless, unable to find a place to rest. Then he sends out a dove. The dove returns. There is still nowhere for it to land. Days pass. Noah waits again. He sends the dove once more. And this time, it returns with something small, but deeply meaningful. A fresh olive leaf in its beak. Just one leaf? But it carries a message stronger than words. Life is returning. The earth is healing. Judgment is giving way to renewal. Still, Noah does not rush. He waits. He sends the dove again. And this time, it does not return. Now there is clarity. The world outside is no longer just water and silence. It is becoming habitable again. But even then, Noah does not move on impulse. He waits for confirmation. He waits for direction. Because when you have lived through judgment, you learn not to move without instruction. And finally, after a long season of waiting, the moment arrives. The earth is ready. The ark is no longer needed as a vessel of survival, but as a vessel of transition. A new beginning is about to unfold, but stepping out of safety into a changed world is never just a physical act. It is the start of something entirely new. After a long period of waiting, the moment finally comes. God speaks to Noah again. Leave the ark. Bring out your family. Bring out every living creature with you. Let them multiply on the earth. And for the first time in a long time, the door opens from the inside. Step by step, Noah and his family walk out of the ark. But what greets them is not the world they once knew. It is new, different. Wounded, yet renewed. The earth is silent, cleansed. Reset. And Noah does something deeply significant. He builds an altar to the Lord, not out of obligation, not out of instruction, but out of gratitude. He offers sacrifices. And in that moment, the scriptures in the book of Genesis reveal something powerful. God responds. He declares in his heart that he will never again curse the ground because of man in the same way. Never again will a flood destroy all life as it had just happened. And then comes a promise that will echo through generations. As long as the earth remains, there will be seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night. The rhythm of creation is restored, and God establishes a covenant, a sign in the sky, the rainbow. Not as decoration, but as a reminder, a divine promise that judgment by water will never again cover the whole earth. A symbol of mercy placed where all humanity can see. From Noah's obedience. A new humanity begins. From judgment. Mercy flows. From destruction. Restoration is born. And the story of Noah closes not with fear, but with hope. A reminder that even in the most corrupted world, one life of obedience can change everything. And if this story spoke to you, don't forget to follow so you don't miss the next one. See you in the next video.